Okay, a bit more against the Reich. I've pushed on to at the start of the second half of August, so essentially that is turn 6, and there are 2 campaign games on offer. The first is the short campaign, which ends at the end of November, which will be, I think, 12 turns, so I'm approaching halfway if I decide to go for the short campaign. Or the long campaign is an additional 6 turns. So it plays fairly quickly. Very well suited for solitaire play because, as I mentioned in the first video, you essentially roll the dice for initiative, and it's a 60-40 chance of the Allies getting it in decent weather and a 50-50 during the winter, and you just activate a counter or a stack, and once the mission has been completed you invert the counter to show its fatigue side, so you can see at a quick glance as to what has and hasn't been used during that turn, and you can step away from the map and do something else and come back to it, and there's no chance of forgetting where you got to. So that's really nice. In this game I went for the historical invasion site of Normandy. Cleared Normandy fairly quickly, but I suppose you've got to remember they are fortnightly turns, so trying to remember when the breakout of the Operation Cobra, that was in July, wasn't it? So yeah, actually pretty historical. I mean, by the end of July the fighting of the Bocage was essentially over in this game, which I guess sort of parallels history quite well. And now the breakout begins, and you are definitely up against it as the Allies, as you try and chase victory points, because the theatre display, as mentioned before, has a number of regions that you need to accumulate victory points for contesting or controlling. And I think for the short campaign you need to get something like 150 points for a marginal victory, and currently they're on about 7 VPs a turn, so another 7 or 8 turns to go, so 50 or 60 only really gets them about halfway. The Germans can put some VPs into the bank for the Allies by reconstructing divisions from the surrendered pile, or by bringing on special reinforcements, 1 per turn. Not quite sure whether or not that's worth it as the Germans. To pay 5 VPs for a division as a special reinforcement seems quite a high price to pay. But we'll see when we get to in terms of the VPs. Did find 1 piece of errata. In one place of the rules it mentions who places their depots first, and I think in one rule section it says it's the Germans, and in the other rule section it says it's the Allies. Well, apparently the errata clarified it that the Germans always place their depots first. Not that they've had any to place so far, because the supply situation for the Germans in my game is it's still on 0. The chance for supply will increase as you get into September, but you've only got a 30% chance of 1 supply point each turn for the Germans in the first bit of the game. The Allies have secured some ports. They've got 2 mulberries which are discharging 2 points apiece. They've got Cherbourg, that was being repaired, so they're up to 7 points, and that's given them a relatively healthy. I think the mulberry ports do disappear, I think November, so they need to have captured some alternative shipping capacity by then. And I think this turn, on the second half of August, they will probably launch the second invasion, because you can have a minor invasion following. You're going to have one minor after the initial major, and that will probably go into the south of France, probably into Provence, which will largely use units that are in Italy. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I mean, the counters are very clear, a tad on the thin side compared to some of the more modern releases that do very nice thick counters now, but certainly perfectly playable. And I like the choices. When you activate a unit, you essentially get 3 action points, so you can do a tactical move followed by a deliberate attack, which gives you a +2 DRM, or you can do an operational move a bit further and do a normal attack without any DRMs, or you can do an intensive attack if you forego all movement. So that gives you some interesting choices. And the other punch comes from allocating larger supply depots to the headquarters. Once you get to the level 2, 3 and 4 depots, you start to get additional DRMs, which you need, I think, to as the Allies anyway, to punch through some of the better terrain. So yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I hadn't played it for a long time, but it's, as I remembered the game, it sort of held pretty fond memories, and it hasn't sort of disappointed. I think it has sort of stood the test of time quite well. Can't say that for all of the older games, but I think this one, it gets quite a lot right. So I'll do a quick catch up around the map, and then probably do another one towards the end of the shorter campaign, maybe on the last turn, because I will probably decide at that point whether to push on to 45 to do the whole thing, or just call it at the end of the short campaign. We'll start in Normandy. You can see it's now devoid of any Axis presence. It's now cleared, apart from there's a little bit of Normandy just over the Seine. So for the Allies, unfortunately, that means that Normandy is contested and not controlled. So it's given them 2 points a turn rather than 4. But they now control Maine, and they're pushing down into Brittany. There's like an expeditionary force of an American HQ and a few semi-motorised divisions moving down, obviously with a goal of capturing Brest, which is a sizeable port, discharge value 3, that's well worth having. Poitou is still garrisoned. It's one of the regions that needs to be garrisoned by the Germans, with at least 2 sort of non-besieged units, otherwise they'll forfeit VPs. And you can see that the Germans have now fallen back behind the Seine. They're still garrisoning the beaches until the minor invasion has been declared. Obviously these would still be a threat. If they were left vacant, they could allow the Allies to invade around the back door, so they'll wait there until it's safe to part the beach areas. And they're building up a bit of a reserve behind the Seine, and the Allies have been pushing up forward. They've got another HQ which has joined them to give them a bit of additional punch and a few more options. So the discharge value is now on 7, so they should be able to get a couple of points a turn on average for their supply. They've got 2 in reserve at the moment. So some of the better HQs, for example, this one here is a level 2 headquarters, so if you're attacking within command radius, which is 4 hexes from the HQ, with that depot you'll get an additional +2 on the dice, which is makes quite a big difference. And there's a level 3 depot which gives you a +3 as well. So this coastline is basically unchanged since the start of the game. And just a quick look around here, we can see the reserves in America are slowly filtering across. There's not many troops left now in England. You can move essentially 3 a turn onto France and only move 2 from the Conus box, so that gradually depletes in the UK. Italy have enough divisions there to mount an invasion of southern France, so Provence, you see, is most likely target. We're 3 VPs if we can control it. And this is the theatre display showing 3 of the regions being contested, and 1 which is Maine, which is now controlled by the Allies. So there you go. We will continue. We're just about to move on to a different table for the German reinforcements. We're going to go to the 2nd of August turn, so there should be a build-up now of German reserves for the next couple of months, and from September the supply table will also improve for them, so they may be able to threaten a bit to launch some meaningful counterattacks. So there you go.